Beginning of Pirkei Avos, first parak in Mishnah Yud, it says, Talim says, the Chachamim Yisor b'divrechem, you've got to be very careful what you say. And the Bartanura says there that the idea is that Aaron says something, he's not medaying, and says it precisely, then people can get the wrong sack, understand the wrong sack, and they can distort Yiddishkeit, and Apikorsim can be fed, their Apikorsis can get new schar as a consequence of not speaking carefully. I have to tell you, I don't know why I chose this topic, in actual fact, when I was thinking about it. It's a topic which is extraordinarily difficult, but it's one that's obviously in everybody's minds, particularly as I live in America at the moment. In America, it's in people's minds a lot. The genesis of the Shir, the genesis of the idea was when this Maisa, I think you saw it was advertised, was that the victims of Pittsburgh, when there was that slaughter of these people in the place in Pittsburgh, that they Dying Al Kiddush HaShem. That's the title of the Shir. And I was in Toronto when this occurred. I was doing a Shabbaton in Toronto. There's this, the Shabbaton that they try to get people to keep all over the world. And somehow over Shabbos, the news percolated through that there'd been a massacre in a shul in America, in Pittsburgh, and we were all set to speak. The 5 Darshanim they brought in to speak all over the city on Motzei Shabbos. They wanted to speak for 10 minutes. They had a whole Ganze celebration, Motzei Shabbos, with the band, the chula. Everybody had to speak for 10 minutes, and I thought that even though everybody just basically said what they prepared, I thought it was inappropriate not to address this issue. And so I did. So you can find this online, I suppose, somewhere. And at the time, I didn't know the details of the case. I didn't know what sort of synagogue it was, I didn't know what the situation was, etc. I just heard that Jews had been killed in the synagogue. Afterwards, of course, then it became a little bit more complicated. There was a video that became very well distributed, in which a certain Rav, this was sent to me, spoke up very, very passionately, even I feel angrily, about those who, realizing what the situation was, now all the details had come in, then to be so distressed about this, he felt was extraordinarily inappropriate. He said in the Shir that his son had said to him, Abba, and said that indeed at the time this terrible attack had occurred, there was a particular celebration of 2 men who had adopted together some children, 2 autistic children, and he'd seen this, the rabbi had said, on the internet, and the attack happened gufa then, and this was his bechor. It was basically, he was saying that, to put it crudely, the whole thing was Shemaim, in very crude terms, they got what they deserved. Unfortunately, when I looked at this, I was absolutely astonished, because to bring a raya, because your son had told you that he'd seen on the internet, somebody had said that this was the matzah, I was a bit suspicious. I don't believe what things say on the internet. So, Alpha Beacon, it turned out that attacker wasn't true. That bit of the story certainly wasn't true. You could argue, but it's the sort of place, the sort of congregation, that if it did happen, there wouldn't be a problem. So that was one person who spoke. The reaction of the Rabbonim in America was extremely more passionate, more angry over this video. And the general position was to be extraordinarily supportive. My chavrista in New York, where I learn every morning, he, at the moment, or maybe just finished, I think it's Shloshim now, the Koilel in Pittsburgh had been led the whole Shas, Le'ila Nishmas, the people were killed, my chavristas led Mishnayos for this, etc., etc. The reaction against what went on was extremely from Gedali America was extremely against this position. And the general was the approach of the Frum, the Haredi Kehillah. I think the public, let's say it that way, the public Haredi Kehillah was one of great support to the people who were killed. Right. Hovering over this whole issue, this idea of how they died, did they die, was it Kiddush HaShem, did they die Al Kiddush HaShem? I have to tell you that it's a sheer, that's why I was considering whether maybe I made a mistake in choosing the topic, which inevitably is going to cause a lot of distress. It's a topic that causes a lot of distress. For those who want to say that they did not die Al Kiddush HaShem, there is a horrible implication which hovers in the background, which nobody wants to talk about. Because what in actual fact happened was, of course, that they were doing whatever they were doing in the building. In comes a fellow who says he wants to kill all Jews and opens up with a machine gun, semi-automatic machine gun, and kills all the people that he killed. Is that Kiddush HaShem? Is that dying Al Kiddush HaShem? And if you say that they were killed and it wasn't Kiddush HaShem, well, what about the Jews who were killed in the Holocaust in very similar situations? And that's the bit that offends and distresses all of us, to even think that any Jew who was killed in the Churban in Europe did not die Al Kiddush HaShem. It really hurts. Just to make it a little bit more complicated, this is Rabbi Dessler. Rabbi Dessler in Chelik Gimel on Michtav Minyan, page 348. The whole essay there is about Kelm, the Yeshiva of Kelm. Rabbi Dessler says that he, in his considered opinion, Kelm was a place miyuchad before the Churban in the whole of Europe. In the Makaras of Hasidus, the Makaras of Musar, the Yeshiva Shabbat, Kelm was unique, he said. The Jews of Kelm, I think of them, the Dugma I have, as Gates said in my time, a unique place. I'm not saying Gates in our time is not exactly the same, but certainly in my time. I feel about Gates said then, the way that Rabbi Dessler writes about Kelm in his time. And then he writes the following thing. Rabbi Mshel B'Timeu. Many people ask and are astonished. Because they were killed in the Chol. What the benefit, what was the point of the killing, of the death of the Yidden in Kelm? Had they died during a gezer of Shmad, and they were moiser nefesh to die Al Kiddush HaShem. So somebody comes and says, he finds you a Catholic or a Avodah of some sort, or I'm going to kill you. And they say, right, I'm going to die Al Kiddush HaShem. Then I understand that. Halal Doverhu, that's a zach, that's something to talk about. But these Nazis, when they came to kill the Jews, it was not a question of faith, a question of belief. There was no distinction between a frum Jew and a non-frum Jew. If you're born to be Yehudim, you're born to be a Yehudi, that was it, you're going to be killed, that was it. What sort of Jew? That was irrelevant. Writes Rabbi Dessler. What's the point of this? The ability, the possibility of them being Mekadesh Shem Shemayim, to be able to have died Al Kiddush HaShem, to have embraced the mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem, then that was robbed, taken away from them. So Rabbi Dessler is saying, about Kedoshim, let's not go into the religiosity of the people in Pittsburgh for a second, we'll come back to that shortly. But people who, he says, were unique in Klal Yisrael in that door, who were Kedoshim, real tzaddikim, but they were robbed of doing the mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem. I'll read that again. The Kaddish is Shemoy Yisbarach Lo Nistal, they weren't given that opportunity. And therefore you've got to say, what's the point of this? Today, Rabbi, many people are astonished by this. Now, obviously, this is a huge parsha, and I'm not going to have the chutzpah to say that we're going to do anything except sketch. This is just a sketch. You can see the Rabbi Dessler, he brings an answer here. The answer is profoundly difficult, and I'm a huge chassid of Rabbi Dessler. You can look at it yourself. You have to combine that with Rabbi Dessler says about Kiddush HaShem and Chelik Aleph, in Chelik Gimel. when he talks about Kiddush HaShem, which is an emistic, and which is not an emistic. But he says at the beginning, his answer is extraordinarily deep, and it is. I don't think it's right. I merely cite this as evidence, it's zelo pashut that he died on Kiddush HaShem. I'm talking about Pittsburgh now. It's difficult simply to imagine that it's such a double pashut, right? If a Jew dies killed by a non-Jew, you're dying on Kiddush HaShem. Rabbi Dessa doesn't say that about the people who died in Kelm. More than that, listening to various Rabbonim who gave shiur on the subject in America at the time, it was one Rav, Rav Schachter, his father I think is the Rosh Yeshiva of the YU in New York. He cited three people who'd gone through the Churban in Europe. One was a famous doctor, one was a Pesach, and they all said the same thing, and you have to really turn to them, to people who went through this. They all said that during, one was in the Vilna ghetto, one was in the Warsaw ghetto, that the people who were going through, who were nebuch in that matzav, then they often said, it was a point of discussion, that you would be discussing halacha in such a matzav, but they were discussing, these people are not being given the mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem. We're being taken out to be slaughtered like sheep, this is what they write. How can it possibly be we're not being able to do the mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem? And then it's horrific. I mean, it disturbs me in preparing this, going into this. How could this be? I mean, it didn't die on Kiddush HaShem. It breaks the Jew's heart to say such a thing. Let's just remind ourselves what the Gedorim are here. So let's go back to the basics. So this is the Rambam Yesodei Torah. I'm sure we're all familiar with this. There's Perikei. Kol Beis Yisrael Mitzavah Kiddush HaShem. Every Yid is mitzvah in the mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem. But very interesting, but we'll come back to that in a minute. The Lashon here is interesting. Kol Beis Yisrael. Mitzvah Kiddush HaShem and mitzvah Kiddush HaShem HaGodel is Hashem Emes Mikdash to be Tzorech Bnei Yisrael. How do you know that? Because it's possible in Parshas Emer, it's Perikov Beis, it's possible Lamed Beis. And you would actually, you make me holy, B'Toich B'nei Yisrael. Amaz Hirin Shalom Achal Hashem, and the converse is true as well. Mekachil Hashem, Ketzah, Shosh Omid Goy Ma'onas Es Yisrael. And one of the mitzvah is, if a guy comes along to compel a Jew, La'avar al-achaz mikol mitzvahs hamoras b'torah, and says, you've got to break, here's a piece of pork, eat this pork or I'll kill you, or you're getting him, yarv v'lo yarek, then eat the pork. Shneimah says, "Mitzvahs asher yasa isam ha'od melchai bohem," because the pasuk says mitzvahs there in order to live a life, not to die. V'lo shimas behem, but not to die from them. Ve'imez v'lo over harizem eskai v'nasha, and if you didn't eat the pork and you gave up your life, then you're going to have to get the din b'kashma. Why are you here? I was not eating the pork for you. You don't understand halacha. But then the Rambam says, "Madvar Mamurim." What am I talking about? I'm talking about almost every mitzvah, but not three mitzvahs. B'shar mitzvahs chutz me'avodah zarah, gil aras, shifchas domim. So it's gil aras, shifchas domim, but then the pasha, and then the next halacha, it's a little bit different. Depends whether that you have to give up your life for. Oh, but even that is a qualification. If it's in front, if it's private, it's not in private. It gets a bit more complicated. And then halacha gimel, the kol ha'davarim ha'elu shelo b'shas hashmad, and all that is not at the time of shmad. Well, there's a general gezar din to rob Klal Yisrael of shmir some mitzvahs, or the ability to keep mitzvahs. Aber b'shas hashmad, because Yamad Melech Roshak and Nebuchadnezzar, we got a ruler like Nebuchadnezzar stands up, v'chaver v'gozra shmad al Yisrael, levatel datim all mitzvahs mina mitzvahs, to give up the Torah completely, or part of the Torah. Then you give up even eating the pork, or even the Vilna Gaon said, even tying your shoelace in the way you're supposed to tie, which is not the most fundamental of the Reise. So that's the idea. That's just a sketch of what the mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem is. The mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem is you choose to die, to sanctify Hashem. In all these cases, now again, qualify in what circumstance, but in all the circumstances we're talking about, the Rambam brings down, this is Gemara in Sanhedrin, of course, this all depends on you choosing. The problem is, what if I don't choose? These people in Pittsburgh weren't choosing, they were robbed of choice. A fellow comes in and starts opening up with a gun, that's not a choice. And therefore, is that dying on Kiddush HaShem?
Rabbi Akiva, who was being tortured to death.
Sorry?
Rabbi Akiva, who was being tortured to death, he said, I can be Makhan in the midst of fire.
Yes, indeed, he's spent his whole life saying that he'd been preparing for this attack for this moment. So that, That was a Shas Shemad. That's very complicated. Did he choose or did he not choose? He said, we'll come to that, so hold fire a second. Yeah. So that's the story there. I saw somebody who wanted to quote the Radak. There's a sefer called Isba Claria. I don't know if you've seen that sefer. The author is a Rav, I believe he lives in Switzerland. I wanted to get in touch with him. And he's even put the whole thing online. It's encyclopedia, like the Shari Aaron, which has got a wonderful likud, brilliantly constructed in each posuk. This is an encyclopedia of Hashkofa. And all the inyanim of Hashkofa, he's got in one place. And the Asbakaria, when he is talking about the mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem, he points to Radak. And the Radak is in Yirmiyahu, and it's in Hay in Posuk Aleph. Now this might be a mahalach for us who are trying to say, well, if they didn't choose, how could they become Kedoshim? How could this be a Kiddush HaShem? So this is let's just read the psukim. Shoytete b'chutzas Yerushalayim. So we're talking about Chum Bas Rishon. Shoytete b'chutzas Yerushalayim. Look carefully, search through the b'chutzas Yerushalayim, look in the courtyards, look in the streets. Im timsu ish. If you find me one Jew, this is Hashem talking. Im yesh oisa mishpot mevakesh. If there's one faithful Jew in the whole of Yerushalayim, I'll forgive him. Give me one. And if Chai Hashem Yomru, and if they say Chai Hashem, if they're making an oath before Hashem, say again, it's the Radak here, and if they make an oath, they're not saying in the name of Hashem, they're saying in the name of other gods. They were completely over avoided Zarah. And if they again Radak, if they are saying if they're making an oath in my name that's not true, but there are people who are keeping Torah and mitzvahs, they're lying. And here's the Radak. The Radak says that David says in Tehillim 9 Tes, "V'nosta es nevelos avdecha Michael Oiv Hashemayim, v'bosa chasidecha lecha es ha'oretz." 9 Tes David HaMelech said, addressing this same situation, that your avodim and your chasidim are now corpses that are being eaten by birds and eaten by animals. So Ibazai comes out clearly. But that's a contradiction. Here it says, try and find me one in the whole of Yerushalayim. But David HaMelech says that there were tzaddikim, avodim, and tzaddikim of Hashem Yisborach who were killed and their bodies were lying in the streets. So I thought there wasn't any from people there. So this is what the Radak answers here. What's he talking? What's Yirmiyahu talking about? Find me one. Oh, perish Ovi, he says, and my Rebbe says, what did he say here? He said, if you can find me in the streets of Yerushalayim, somebody who's a faithful Yid. Oh, that's different. However, ki chasidim shahoyim Yerushalayim, but the frum, the faithful Jews at the time of Chum Bas Rishon, they existed, but they didn't go out into the street. The streets were wild and like the internet. They wouldn't go out there. They stayed in their houses. They weren't able to go out to the streets because of the priests, because of the Avodah Zarah, and all the other things that they would see there. Chazal saying, another pshat, how could they be called tzaddikim? Because they were killed by goyim. Even though they were Rishayim, and Taka, because their lifestyle was dreadful, they were over Avodah Zarah and absolutely everything you can imagine. But because they were killed by goyim, despite being Chayvim Misa, Niskaper Lehem B'Misasam, then the deaths, being killed by goyim, was a kapora. And therefore you call Chasidim B'Chasidecha. That's what it's talking about. So two answers. How could it be that we've got a contradiction that Yirmiyahu says there were no from people in the whole of Yerushalayim, which David HaMelech he refers to as being that they were killed Hasidim and Avodim of Hashem Yisborach. Answer number one, they existed, but Yirmiyahu is talking about the streets. But they kept off the streets, they existed. Answer number two, we're not even talking, maybe they were in the streets. And maybe they were all Rishayim, but being killed by a guy, that bestows automatically upon you the category of martyr and dying as being a Yid. Ashtikl Gedr of Kiddush HaShem. So that's the answer that some of the rabbis looking to get out of this unpleasant dilemma have pointed to. But it's problematic. It's problematic because Rashi already says in Tehillim, and we look at it there, and we're going to have to look at the Tehillim for a second in some depth. So this is Ein Tes Aleph. Mizvah lo osuf, Elokim bo goyim banach bosechel. So the goyim have come into the Beis HaMikdash. Timu es heichel kodshecha. They have defiled it, thank you. Some is Yerushalayim Na'im, and made Yerushalayim laid it low, or turned it to rubble, different explanations. Nosta is niblas avodecha, machol oif, Shamayim. It's turned, and here we get the word avodim. So it's turned the corpses of your avodim into food for the birds. And for the animals of the earth. Shavcha dam and kamaim, their blood has been spilled like water. Savibas Yerushalayim be'in kaiver. The corpses are all around Yerushalayim and nobody can bury them. That's what it says there. And the Radak repeats this, it's almost exact same words as the Radak that we just saw in Yirmiyahu. He says it here. It says it again. But Rashi says, and we'll look at Radak again in a second, and Rashi says, where are the Rishoyim? And Rashi says, Ela, Mishak, listen to Loshen. I was discussing this with my son, so maybe you can give me your help. How would you translate this? Ela, Mishakablu Paranasam. When they were Makabel Paranasam, or he wanted to translate it as when the punishment came. Makabel, you could translate it either way. Because Makabel Paranasam, Harihim Chasidim. They were Chasidim. V'keinu ayim v'nalaka achecha, and he brings psukim that such a thing, when they were Makabel the Paranas, then they became Chasidim. Now the Rambam says that we looked at them at the beginning, how does Kiddush HaShem work? It's a choice you make. Our problem is that the people in Pittsburgh weren't making any choices. It happened to them, which has this horrible implication for the so many millions who were killed in the Churban. They didn't choose either. But here we got a Lashon of Rashi, which is a remez, but if they were makabel it, then they become Hasidim. But there's a problem here. Because it comes out, therefore, according to the Radak, let me remind ourselves the Radak said again, even if the Rishoyim, the Chai Misa, and the Chai Misa, Neskaper lehem b'misosa. The fact that they were killed by Goyim was Neskaper b'misosa. But that's not Chiddush. We all know that death is Machad. The Rambam in Hilchos Teshuvah, when he talks about the worst avera a Jew can do, which is kill Hashem, when he talks about the Gedorim, it needs Teshuvah, it needs Yom Kippur, it needs suffering that happens to him or her in their lifetime, and death. Death is the final thing. So the death of a Yid in the action of dying, of being nifter, in and of itself, takes away the sins that you've done. But that's a different gather. That just means that the slate, as you would say in English, is wiped clean. It hardly turns you into a tzaddik. The argument goes. With me so far. Complicated. Complicated and a bit unpleasant. Yeah. So I found in Sefer Mikdash Ma'at, in Mishlei Mikdash, I'm not sure if I find it here, a way out of this. This might be a way out of this. Why? If my translation of Rashi is correct, and Rashi says when they're makabel the punishment, that would turn it into an action of choice, an action of doing something. Then that could turn it into a Kiddush HaShem. Now, this is I find this very exciting actually when I found this. let me remind you what we said in Tehillim again. Possible. Right? So then the corpses of the people are tended to strewn in the streets. Their blood is spilled all over the place. So the Arizal makes a very interesting comment here. He says it's the wrong way around. They would bleed first, would you not, and then become a corpse. The bleeding is a consequence of a makkah. The makkah produces the misa. So you would expect it, first of all, to be the pasuk referred to them bleeding and then dying. Rest the other way about. So it's hard to read. So let me read this to you. So this is the Arizal. Arizal says, Lama b'tchila koinen es nevelos hadecha. Why is it called at the beginning of the first pasuk nevelos hadecha? V'achach es shifkas domim. And in the third pasuk, it refers to the fact that they bled. Is the other way about. Surely we should talk about them bleeding first, then them dying. Because that comes first. And then they would die, which is exactly what happens, of course, in the way of death. Listen to this. How could we call Chassidim if they were attacking Rishoyim? If they were attacking at that time really very badly. It's the Arizal. Because the Arizal is usually, Tifa Kabbalah stuff. But here's Pshat, very interesting Pshat. Since they're Makabal, they're Einish. Nikro Chassidim, that makes them Chassidim. At the moment when they're Makabal, when are the Makabal Einish? When they've been stabbed by a sword. So the person knows that he's going to die. He's bleeding. And is makabel this einish. Then, shifkas dom in royal lekainen adayin ach acha shekavar kiblo anshel. But then, so therefore, to call them a cause it's not yet applicable because they've not yet the process leading on to death has not yet occurred. But nishafach domim az royal lekainen alehem ki kavar him korem chasidim shahoya ba anshel mabeis vabo alehem ba'achal yasem chasidim. So once they've been makabelit, and the moment they know they're going to die, and they're makabel that when it comes to the point of their death, then they turn into Chassidim. Interesting. And if it says after that, they wouldn't get the idea that they were makabel. He's trying to emphasize the fact that they were makabel, they were accepting of it. Then that would turn them into tzaddikim. Fine. Now, that means that we're talking, therefore, that they could become Chassidim, and what David HaMelech is saying is because they're Makabel. That's a choice. The mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem is when you choose to die al Kiddush HaShem. And therefore, if now we're talking together that a person sees that their death is going to occur and accepts it because I'm dying as a Jew, then you can understand that that's a Kiddush HaShem. After all, we all know that if a Jew refuses to give a get. Now, if you force a Jew to give a get, there's an unfortunate case of this in America recently, then it's not a get. But if a Beis Din forces him, if a Beis Din takes him and they give him makas, and he says, Rotzani, we're makabel that because really he does. Because Jews are basically good. Every Jew, we said this morning, every morning, I am a holy Yid, I'm a Kodesh. It's just that my Yitzhahara has dominated me. By giving me makas, you freed me from the Yitzhahara for the moment, and I said, I want to give the get. That's a get. If that's something we find easy, it's easy to imagine that maybe a Jew could say such a thing, because ultimately Jews are good, as the Gary Rebbe used to say all the time, Jews are good. Oh, does that mean all Jews are good all the time? Certainly not. The Alshon says in his introduction to Pirkei Avos, when it says, because it says, your people, Ame Kulam Tzadikim, said the Alshon, pardon? All Jews are good? Don't we know any bad Jews? Sadly. But it means that really the intrinsic model, that Jew who's bad is doing bad things, brought up badly, whatever it is, but the basic hefzer, the basic person is good. He might have to come back to sort out his problems and maybe have to come back and Gilgal a few times. But Jews are basically good. So if this basically good Jew says, Rod Sadi, I want to give the get. For the last 2 years, under no circumstances, you'll dance in my grave, I'll not get the get. Poof, 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 poof. Yeah? I want to fuck Valdi. That's the real you. Well, if you've ever been with somebody who dies, then you really see the real person. Then you can really see the real person. And as I once told you, we don't have time because of so little time here, but really once I was in a plane crash in South Africa, once upon a time, we're flying around for an hour before the plane crash, then you really truly discover, when you think you're going to die, and I really thought I was going to die, then you really discover the person you are, your chesronos and your miles, etc. And you understand, so therefore, oy bazoi comes out, according to their result, very nice. It could be that the people, Taka, at the moment they are shot, as in the Pittsburgh thing, the Pittsburgh incident, then they know they're going to die, and at that moment, even if their whole life was not one of exemplary Jewish behavior, and even, incidentally, it was a mixture of Reconstructionist Jews, Reformed Jews, they've all got little rooms where they do have their services, and conservative, I think it was conservative Jews who were mostly killed, and very old people. So therefore, you could generally assume, I think, that most of them were, without question, Jews. And conservative Jews in America are more or less like most United Synagogue Jews in the UK. I mean, they don't know much. They're nice, simple, straightforward people. They just don't know much. Like teenage Shanishma, and that's a whole parsha which we should really address here, but we don't have time to do it. And I missed out tons. Missed out the Ramon Yoridin and Shin Mem when he talks about interesting. You cut kriya for somebody who dies, but what if somebody is a mumer, is an apikarish, and the person dies? You cut kriya. You show him. Oh, everybody says no. Oh, but if he was killed by a goy, you show him that you do. There's a possibility that dying as a Jew and being makabel and welcoming, not quite the right word, but accepting, embracing, that's the good word. To embrace the fact that I'm dying as a Jew, that should be good enough. Fine. And then, I found this. This is Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Remember it said, the Rambam said, when he's talking about the mitzvah of Dying Al Kiddush HaShem, Kol Beis Yisrael. Kol Beis Yisrael. Interesting lotion. He doesn't say Kol Beis Yisrael, Mechuf to put on tefillin, tzitzis, sit in sukkahs, but he does when it comes to the mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem. So I wanted to tell you what Rabbi Yaakov says here in Sefer Emes Yaakov. He says, I'm the Rambam, and he says, if you look at that Rambam, which calls it Zel Shana, Kol Beis Yisrael, Mitzvah Al Kiddush HaShem, Al Gadol Hazeh, take on this big mitzvah, and it says Kol Yisrael and Beis Yisrael. Masha calls it Kol. Why do you say Kol Beis Yisrael? Keep it Shavravas and Fila Ketanim, because he says it includes even children. Interesting. Because it says in Tehillim Kuf Tezvov, Yivarechas Beis Yisrael, a Ketanim in Haggadah, we know that capital very well. That everybody's due to be Mekadosh and bless Hashem is Baruch Ketanim and in Gedolim. Batam Nira Li. And says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, the reason it includes children, and it says the posuk, "V'nigdashti b'self b'nei Yisrael," from which the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem comes from. Listen again. The posuk is called Beis in Parshas Emor, posuk Lamed Beis. V'nigdashti b'self b'nei Yisrael. How would you translate v'nigdashti? And I will be made holy. It doesn't say v'tadishu es shemi. It doesn't say v'tadishu es shemi. Make my name holy. Listen to this. Because then it would be talking about us. It's talking about us. We have to go and do the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. But since the Lord says as though He makes it happen, then maybe children. Now, children is not, maybe not a bar das, certainly not a bar mitzvah or a bas mitzvah. They have no chiyuv to do this, to give up their life to die on mitzvah's Kiddush Hashem. Well, Martin Zeichel Ladover Apostle Shehebi a Rambam the Sefer Mitzvahs, and he brings the Rambam, he says it's a hint from the Rambam as well. Venir, Shalzeh Somcha Avasena B'Yemei HaBeinaim. Interesting motion. In the Middle Ages, Yemei HaBeinaim. And that's why Yidden, at the time of the Middle Ages, and we're talking the Crusades, etc., that they were willing to give up their lives and the lives of their children to die al Kiddush Hashem. Why take the children into this? And the Inquisition and the Crusades, why did they do that? He said, because maybe there's a gather, therefore, of a child being mechuv in the midst of Kiddush HaShem. He's not mechuv at all. It comes out that the child is Makayim the mitzvah of Kiddush HaShem through the choice of their parents. Through the choice of their parents. That you, by embracing your parents, or the parents embracing you and making this choice for you, is still considered your choice. That's an interesting idea. It's not ultimately your choice. But even if I want to say that maybe tackle the people who killed in Pittsburgh, even though their lives were maybe totally different to our lives, their lifestyles, etc., their shmiras and mitzvahs. But as a yid, stam as a yid, who's a Kaddish, and that's tackling Mahalach of the Gates of Rav, I spoke about this recently, that they're innately Kaddoshim, and therefore that emerged like the makas of the person who won't give the get at the last moment. But what if there's no das there at all? Like a child? But still you could be shlepped in the midst of Kiddush HaShem through you belonging to your parents doing Kiddush HaShem. That's a very interesting, and it's the Yaakov. And then I cleared that after all, I'm completely out of time, in Ruach Chaim, the 5th period, Pirkei opposite says that Hashem is Borach. So first of all it says there's 10 generations from Adam to Noach, men from Noach to Avram. And then it says in the next Mishnah, 10 tests was given to Avram Avinu. And Ruchaim Volozhin points out, why does it say Avram Avinu in the second Mishnah, and the first time, when it's talking about the generation, it just says Avram? He said, because of the mitzvahs, because of the Nisyanis that Avram passed, that programmed into the DNA, into the genes. Incidentally, there's no scientific research that says that your choices do affect your genes and your DNA. How about that? So that we become Avram Avinu's children. Therefore it's called Avram Avinu. The fact that he didn't want to go and live in Eretz Yisrael, which frankly, from a materialistic point of view, is insanity. The old joke about how do you become a millionaire when you go to live in Eretz Yisrael, make Aliyah, answer, go with 10 million, and you become a millionaire, you get the idea. But he says that the fact that over the generations, Jews have been willing to give up their lives to Dying Al Kiddush HaShem, that comes from Avram Avinu. In other words, that is, it linked in what a Jew is all about. If it's possible that my idea and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky is correct, and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky is saying that even a child, somebody who's not a bardas, somebody who's not welcoming this at the last moment, through being schlepped into advice by the parents, being part of a kehillah, that would constitute Kiddush HaShem. What about if it wasn't the parents? What about you were schlepped into the mitzvah by Hashem Yisbarach himself? I've quoted this to you before. Rabbi Bechaya says, this is in Parshas Matos, when Moshe Rabbeinu is told to go and fight against the Midianim and fight a war of revenge for what he did to Klal Yisrael. And everybody remembers that Moshe Rabbeinu changes it and says to the Yidden, we've got to go and fight a war of the covenant of Hashem, not for the covenant of Klal Yisrael. This is what Rabbeinu Bachya says. Nekamas b'nei Yisrael, Moshe Omer Nekamas Hashem. Omer Moshe HaKadosh Baruch, Moshe said to HaKadosh Baruch, Rabbanu Shalom, Moshe says, if we were uncircumcised, or we did avodah zarah, they wouldn't hate us at all. And why do they hate us? Because the Torah and the mitzvahs that you give us, that we are circumcised, that we are Jewish. Hand up here, everybody keeps all the mitzvahs. I mean, in Klal Yisrael, the majority of Jews don't keep all the mitzvahs. Maybe the majority don't even try to keep all the mitzvahs. But you're still a Jew, you're still part of Klal Yisrael. Hashem gave you that stempel on your guf, on your neshama. It comes out very easily that maybe Hashem Yisbarach has schlepped you in the same way as the parents would schlepp you to die Al Kiddush HaShem. And Kenzai, when you were lying there bleeding, or when you were first hit by the bullet, the Taka, you would say, okay, I'm going to die. At least I accept this, I'm dying as a Jew. And that would turn out into Kiddush HaShem. Because then it would be a road sin. Seconds passing. I spoke at a show, it was in Staten Island, about 6 months ago. They were very upset because one of the Yidden had dropped a Sefer Torah. And so they had a whole day's limit, and I was one of the people brought out there to speak. And the Rav of the shul, it was a modern Orthodox shul. It's not the sort of shul where a rabbi stands up with his fire and brimstone all day long. But he said, look, if I was to tell you why this happened, I would say, if I have to, and please forgive me, because really, there's three things came to my mind. We don't give enough Kovod l'Torah. When a speaker comes to town, the show's not full. We don't give enough tzedakah. and we speak during davening. We should work in these. And the reason I tell you this is because you all know who it was that dropped the Sefer Torah. And then he said, I'm going to tell in case you don't know who dropped the Sefer Torah. And he mentioned some Jew's name, Yankel Rabin, that's what his name is. And the reason I'm telling you that is because we all know Yankel. Yankel gives covenant Torah all the time. Whatever this year, he's always here. Tzedakah, he's not the richest of man, he always gives exactly what he can give. He's here, he gives. And speak in shul, he never speaks in shul. So what was going on about me? How did that happen to him? Why him? So when he went to discuss it with Reuben Feinstein, Reuben Feinstein thought for a second and said, well, it had to be him. Because had it happened to somebody else, somebody who talks, somebody who doesn't give tzedakah, or somebody who doesn't cover the Torah, people say, that's why. But if it happens to somebody who is completely clear of this, then we'll turn around and say, it can't be him that's to blame. It must be us. But that model doesn't work when it comes to an incident like happened in Pittsburgh, or when the Jews were, those people who were misspelled in Har Nof when 2 Arabs slaughtered them, etc. We don't say that. We don't make that calculation. When another Yid is suffering, then Taka, or something that happens in Pittsburgh, our attitude can never be, it's because of them. Because they're called Yisrael and the Ravens in Zed. This is a chilek of Klal Yisrael. And if they Taka behave terribly and they believe in all sorts of nonsense and they think you don't have to keep this and men can marry men and all sorts of garbage like that, I am Achroi. Because I'm a member of Klal Yisrael. And maybe I didn't reach out enough, and maybe I don't reach out enough, and maybe I don't write enough, and maybe I don't speak enough, and maybe, as the Chofetz Chaim says repeatedly in his writings, if you've got an ability to reach out, which affects most of us, we should be reaching out. We don't turn around and make that calculation. People would turn around and say it's because of him. No, and you know what? In this case, when it comes to a klal, we don't say it's them and that shul, that's our person. We turn around and say, this is affects God's klal Yisrael. Whatever the reason, and maybe everything I told you is wrong, and I'm not even a Talmud Chacham since I'm constantly standing here. But the truth of the matter is, such a thing to happen, and for us not to look deeply into our hearts. And that's not the only thing that's happened since then. You probably hear in America, which the Golden Medina is becoming not so golden at the moment, with Jews being attacked in Borough Park, and some are trying to run over Jews in Los Angeles, etc. There's a message of some sort to all of us. I think we're a charai to assume that they died Al Kiddush HaShem, that the Taka were Yidden who saw the emes, at least at the last moment, were makabel that from Hashem Yisborach, and then we've got to ask ourselves, if such Yidden were killed, what's the message for me, and act accordingly.